All right, y'all. So we're doing these Elden Ring reactions because we know the DLC is coming out soon. And I got to know more about it. But I have finished all the VaatiVidya videos that I wanted to watch about Elden Ring, and I got a lot of great recommendations from y'all in the comments. One that kept coming up was Tarnished Archaeologist, who had a lot of in-depth, sort of real-life examples of the things in Elden Ring, and that really intrigued me. So I decided I'm going to go watch a video. And today, let's learn about Shabriri.
There's someone there. Would you donate any Shabriri grapes in your
no.
to me? I'm on a pilgrimage in search of the distant light.
This poor
and
woman.
When I eat one of those grapes, I can feel the light in the back of my eyes.
Yeah. If thy right eye offend thee, pluck it out and cast it from thee, and not that the whole body should be cast into hell. So there's some Christian relevance here.
Is that you over there? I've gleaned something very important indeed, thanks to you. The reason.
You know, the name of this video is Shabriri is real.
Is far and frail.
I'm pretty sure the three fingers is not real, and the frenzied flame is not real. It'd be kind of fucked up. I watched this video and it's like, the frenzied flame is real.
How do you know that what you see is real? Probably this is
Very philosophical question. You ever heard the phrase, I think, therefore I am? It's basically a reduction in philosophy that how do we know what's real, right? Well, our senses tell us things that are real. We can touch things, we can see things, we can hear things. You know, you're watching me and you're assuming I'm real. Or if you were here with me, you could, you know, touch my face and trust those senses, right? But how do we know that our senses are not just fed to us? What if, like, the Matrix is real, for example? That's a very philosophical question. Like, how do we know we're not living in a Matrix? So somebody whose name is escaping me once said, maybe Descartes, said, I think, therefore I am. I know I'm real because I can think and experience something. So I must be real. Everything beyond that, that's up for debate, you know?
is not something you frequently ask yourself, but that's only because of intersubjectivity. That is to say, if many people see the same thing, then we agree it's probably real. But what if you start seeing things that other people don't see? Which one is real? The world that you see or the one that everyone else does?
It's a hard question.
Perhaps both, perhaps neither. And most importantly, what would you do if you thought the world you experienced wasn't real?
You know, okay, so right off the bat, they gave a biblical quote from Matthew in there. I'm not a very religious person, but sometimes when I'm having conversations about religion, people will say, oh, I was guided by God. I heard God. God told me to do something. And I'm just over here like, okay, it doesn't match my reality. You know, I've never heard a voice in my head. So right off the bat is, what do you do? Well, I don't know. I just ignore it. But I mean, that creates a lot of turmoil in the world, right?
These are questions that philosophers and college freshmen alike have been asking for a very long time. And in Elden Ring, the question is posed through a horrifying and real-world inspired story. The story of Vike, Hyeda, the Shabriri grapes, and the flame of frenzy.
A wild-ass story. Check out my Vati reaction to the Frenzied Flame if you haven't, or just go watch his video, or whatever.
River blindness
it's one of the best
is
endings,
the
in my
second leading
opinion.
cause of infectious blindness worldwide,
River blindness.
affecting over 20 million people in 2017.
Look at these naked babies.
It's caused, as opposed to causes of blindness perhaps more ordinary to the developed world, like diabetes or macular degeneration,
It's parasites?
by a parasitic worm,
Yeah.
the filarial nematode Onchocerca volvulus. We are the obligate host for this worm, meaning it cannot survive without infecting us. Humans are infected by the bite of an adult black fly, which deposits larvae under the skin of us, the host. It's called river blindness because the risk of infection is related to being near a water source where the flies are spawning. These Deposited larvae mature, then live under the skin for usually about a year
That's
before
insane.
migrating under the skin and, of course, reproducing.
It's
The total
really
number
gross.
of
I hate
these
that.
tiny parasitic worms in an infected host can reach 100 million.
Yeah, no shit. That's
Once they start
insane.
migrating,
It's all about the numbers, right? So check this out right here. What it's about to show you. Let me grab my mouse. These they migrate, and you see them. It's because they float down the blood, right? I had a friend once when I was in the military, and we were in a different part of the world. We were done with our deployment, came back, and when he was on leave, he noticed spots down his arm, and he had fly larvae in him, and they ended up removing it. He didn't end up with any weird like parasitic infections in his eyes and shit, but what they're showing right now, I've seen happen to somebody. It's crazy.
they seem to have a particular predilection for the eye, which is why they can cause blindness. Onchocerciasis, the medical name for this infection, causes blindness by directly infecting the eye, damaging the optic nerves and surrounding structures, often causing characteristic external features, making it quite easy to identify those affected by just looking at their eyes.
It'd be awful. That dude used some MS Paint
especially
animation.
if untreated, include an
Looks good.
unbearably itchy skin rash, pain,
Oof.
progressive blindness, and even seizures
Oh, it's
if
awful.
the parasite makes it to the brain.
Ooh, look at that.
These symptoms, while horrifying and alien to most of us, are just the facts of life in endemic areas,
Yeah,
predominantly sub-Saharan Africa,
no
with
medicine.
an estimated 200 million people still at risk of infection currently in the world today. And there are many other types of parasitic blindness beyond just river blindness. So common is the association between water and blindness that, in fact, many folktales and myths have sprung up to explain this connection. The Burkinabe people in West Africa, for example, tell a story of how, if you live too close to the river itself will eat your eyes. And in the Hebrew
Sure.
Bible, there is a demon that lurks in uncovered water at night.
There's a
and
million, thousands of examples of things like this where throughout history we don't really know what causes an illness, but we use our common sense to try to come up with it. All these people getting bit by flies that are near the water end up going blind. So the pattern emerges. People that live near the water are going blind. The river is eating you, you know? There's always things like this. A lot of stuff in religion is like that. There's a whole philosophy that's like the God of the gap. So it's like when you don't know the answer to something, if there's no like scientific answer or something like that, you fill that in with magic or God, right? So that eventually over time we developed science and we started learning about things and why it really happened. And of course the river's not eating you. There's a fly and a parasite and stuff. And now we've learned. So now people no longer think it's river god or whatever. It's a parasite. So the God just fills in the gaps of knowledge. So the more we know, the less there's God. It's kind of a really interesting topic, I think, anyway.
Causes blindness in those who drink the water. The name of this demon is Shabriri.
Oh, what the fuck? Is that real? In Jewish demonology, the spirit which rests on uncovered something which will cause blindness or ocular disease to those who drink of it. What?
So, now you know where we're going with this.
I do.
Elden Ring Shabriri,
Oh yeah, this is an Elden
as
Ring
has
video.
been pointed out by many internet sleuths
Forgot.
early on in Elden Ring's life cycle, is indeed named after this demon of Hebrew mythology. But the story of that demon is in turn in
Look at this dude's
demon
ass.
of Hebrew mythology.
Look at this. What am I looking at? Yo, it's his ass face. Are there any others? Nope, that's the only ass face. That is insane, dude.
But the story of that demon is in turn inspired by real-world parasitic infections that are associated with water and
Crazy.
cause blindness. The game even makes it clear that frenzy is a transmissible disease, according to the inescapable frenzy description.
Does it
which
say
reads,
disease?
Quote, causes the yellow flame of frenzy to blaze from the caster's eyes. The caster then latches onto foes, spreading the madness. End quote.
Oh, spreading madness.
Importantly,
Okay. They don't say
the name
disease.
Shabriri, as a reference to the folklore surrounding parasitic blindness, like river blindness, goes even further. And exploring these real world inspirations can help us decipher the in game story.
Chapter 2. What do you see?
Blindness, not specifically river blindness, but really any acquired blindness, can cause paradoxical visions called visual release phenomena, basically visual hallucinations, caused by your brain trying to fill in the gaps and create visual information after being
Yeah.
deprived of it due to blindness.
Yeah, I've heard of this. So even someone with normal vision experiences this. So you've ever heard that like there's a blind spot, there's blind spots in your vision and your brain just fills it in. I don't remember if it's on the side or right in the middle or both, right? But for example, it can be maybe you have like a smoke detector in your house. This is a top of mind example for me. Have a smoke detector like in your bedroom, the lights are out, and it's got that little green light or a red light or something on it. If it's a steady light, it'll be really dark. Look right at it and it disappears. You can't see it anymore because your brain typically fills in these gaps based on peripheral information. But if you're looking directly at it, you can't see what's in dead center. You can see it better if you just move your eye off to the side just a little bit. So your brain is pre-wired to fill in things that it can't see just to smooth out your vision, make you question stuff less. So you start going blind and your brain still does that. Well, what does it fill it in with? It does its best, but it's not really meant to fill in like huge chunks of your vision. So you'll just start seeing crazy shit.
And create visual information after being deprived of it due to blindness. In other words, your brain is still trying to see, it just no longer has any actual visual information coming from the eyes, so it creates its own. People affected by this will describe anything from a simple hallucination like lines or shapes to far more complex ones like seeing faces or sometimes
I've
even
never thought
entire
about this
scenes.
with complete blindness.
So in a way, river blindness
Wow.
doesn't just cause blindness, but it actually changes what you see.
Wow. Interesting.
And in Elden Ring, what is in your eyes definitely controls what you see. There's a nice parallel here with the Golden Runes.
The flame.
For example, the Lands Between rune, which reads, quote, "Grace said to have once dwelled in the eyes of the inhabitants of the Lands Between, the lingering residue of gold. No grace resides in the eyes of the Tarnished. If it ever did, it is now lost." End quote.
Okay.
Credit to Reddit
Loose
user Drew
connection,
Ewing for
in my
pointing
opinion.
this out. The phrase "dwelled in the eyes" here is meant to be quite literal, of course, as we know that many characters recognize us as Tarnished just by looking in our eyes, and even the eyes of our paterfamilias Godfrey faded characteristically one fateful day.
Oh, wow. So what does it look like, though?
The color of your eyes is basically diagnostic for the influence one is under.
Whoa. Whoa. Look at all this. Godfrey said the boars, bears. Let's find some interesting ones. The dragons, Dragon Lord Plusidex is like bright yellow. I'm not seeing any real patterns here. Commoner. So look on the bottom left. Those are really interesting. They all have some hint of gold in them. Really, the bottom half is really interesting. Like Fallen Hawk, Misbegottens, Royal Riders, Commander. They all have some golden tint. Like there's maybe like a golden parasite, a hint of flame in everyone's eyes, including Red Wolf of Radagon. Interesting.
During the game. And visually, the rune items, especially the more valuable ones, look more and more like actual eyes. FromSoft have kind of done this before with Cold Blood Dew in Bloodborne, consumable items that become increasingly arcane as they become more and more valuable.
Yeah, I see that.
And it becomes increasingly evident what their true nature is. Likewise here, the more valuable rune items make it clear that what we are actually collecting comes from eyes.
Okay. I guess I could see that, yeah. No pun intended.
So the general notion seems to be that the influence of the three fingers manifests with river blindness eye, aka Shabriri grape, a kind of parasitic infection, while two fingers' influence manifests as golden eyes, referred
Okay.
to as
Yeah.
the grace of gold.
I see that.
Of course, there's more than a little bit of orthodox propaganda in these item descriptions and terms. And in both cases, this influence clearly affects what we see. For example, as we discussed in our previous video, many NPCs are impressed that we can still see the guidance of grace at all,
Oh,
establishing
true.
that the world we see is somehow affected by whether or not we've been graced.
Ah.
Likewise, the description of the golden rune reads in part, quote, "Even now, runes are still imbued with the power of life itself."
So guidance of grace could just be what we see, and that it's a total hallucination. I think in the game, I've kind of always thought that because where the grace guides you to go is kind of accurate. Like sometimes it's helpful, and sometimes it seems to just guide you off in random places or in circles. You know, like there are times you just literally have to go somewhere else because it doesn't always take you where you need to be. You'll have two of them that just are pointing in opposite directions that aren't too far from each other. So is that is it a hallucination? I like to try to find the science in it. Like obviously Elden Ring is like magic and stuff. So, you know, there's guidance of grace, but I try to look at things kind of literally or scientifically, right? You know, what do we know about it? Well, it could be your personal hallucination. I guess in Elden Ring, it could be like a mass hallucination. It could be real magic. I don't know. There's a lot of options.
Do you see the Erd tree towering over there? End quote. The
You did say that. I want to hear that.
Do you see the Erd? Now, runes are still imbued with the power of life itself. Do you see the Erd tree towering over there? End quote. The implication of this question being that
You might not see
some
it.
people don't even see the Erd tree at all.
Wow.
Similarly, the finger reader crone outside the walls of Langdell asks us, with a certain tone of desperation,
Surely you see it too. The gold that enshrouds the heavens. The great
Oh, she does say it like you might not see it. She says it like you might not see it. Wow.
We've gone into depth as to the other reasons why this might be the case in previous videos. So here, let's just keep it simple.
Well, I didn't watch a previous
The only
video.
reason to ask if we see the gigantic golden tree towering in the distance, which of course would be an absurd question otherwise, is that not everyone can see it.
That's
just
crazy,
like not
dude.
everyone can see the guidance of grace.
Whoa.
Indeed,
I
these
never
days,
would have thought
the
that.
Erd tree is merely an object of faith.
Whoa. That just blew my mind.
Likewise, the Shabriri grape, which causes a burning in the back of Hayeda's eye, that also guides her,
It's just a parasite
distant light as she
eating
calls
her.
it, is inspired by
Gross.
visual hallucinations seen by the blind, including those afflicted with river blindness. Hayeda is guided by a light that only she can see. For context, this is an idea FromSoft have beautifully explored before with Bloodborne's Ludwig, who is guided by
Yo, Bloodborne is quite literally like alien parasite, right? So my Bloodborne lore is not quite Elden Ring ready, right? But what I took from it is in Bloodborne there is like literally a parasitic infection. That's why it's called Bloodborne. It's the blood of the people kind of like hold a parasite or something that's traveling. So you get the blood on you, it goes in you turn crazy into like a beast or something, right? There's a huge parallel here that it's a parasite. If you get it in you, it guides you somewhere, or in Bloodborne, you turn into something. I think that's really neat.
fleeting bits of light, a private, elusive sort of guidance. But that's a story for another day.
Yeah. A good
So,
story, though.
being affected by the flame of frenzy appears to actually change what you see. This helps to explain why in the cutscene of the frenzied flame ending, there is a literal optic disc in the sky. Not only does it look like a real-life optic disc
yes,
as
it
you'd
does.
see on a fundoscopic exam, But if you compare the image of the sky to the artwork of the frenzied eye, it's identical.
Yeah.
So there's
Very
a
Lord of the
literal eye in
Rings.
the sky, a clear allusion to the fact that frenzy changes the world by changing how its adherents see it.
Wow. Now that is getting kind of deep. Chapter 3, A Cure for the Madness. Yeah, that's getting deep. It's like saying it changes the world because you change what everyone sees. If you could not actually change a thing, but you can change what people believe or change what their senses take in, did you not just change the world? I like that. Well, it's a big question.
So we ask again, what would you do if you started to doubt that the world you experienced visually wasn't the real one?
That'd be tough.
Elden Ring offers one answer to this question.
I feel like I
through
would
the
try to
tragic
trust
story
my
of
senses.
Fingerprint Vike, once known as Round Table Knight Vike.
Mm-hmm.
Vike was a knight of the Round
I still
Table.
don't understand why I had to take off all my clothes to go get embraced by the Three Fingers, but he clearly just walked in full armor.
Hold, an adherent of the ancient dragon cult, and the most accomplished Tarnished prior to the player character's arrival, perhaps besides Lord Godfrey himself. Not only was he Lanciax's favorite, but he is the only one prior to us to have collected 2 great runes. So why didn't he mend the Elden Ring then? Well, we are told he fell to the Flame of Frenzy, apparently seduced with the possibility of saving his maiden from her gruesome death as kindling for the Flame of Ruin. Though this intention is undoubtedly noble, it set him down a dark path, and he was, according to the fingerprint grape description,
The man had a job to do, and what'd he do? Get sidetracked by a lady? I tell you, a story as old as time.
ultimately embraced by the 3 fingers, his skin seared with their indelible mark. These seared marks, by the way, may also be inspired by river blindness, which causes unbearably itchy skin lesions. Over time, these lesions harden like scale, and sometimes the itch is so intense that sufferers have been known to burn their own skin just to get relief. We get this item, by the way,
he was embraced
from Vike himself after he invades us as festering Fingerprint Vike. So Vike inherited the Flame of Frenzy, but we know he didn't trigger the Frenzied Flame ending because, well, the world still exists.
Yeah.
So what happened? Well, in the Lord Contender's Everjail, we see him imprisoned, and critically, he's somehow been cured of frenzy. His moniker has changed back to Round Table Knight Vike.
Oh, yes.
He's using his red lightning incantations instead of the frenzied flame incantations.
I guess I just assumed that the Everjails were outside of time. There's a lot of not a lot, but there's some time differences and things within the game. I didn't question that at all. I just assumed it was from a different timeline or something.
Incantations instead of the frenzied flame incantations. At first glance, it's easy to write this off as simply another case of temporal shenanigans. The flow of time is convoluted and
that's exactly what I said.
But actually, closer inspection of the forensics tells a different story. Because the fingerprint grape tells us that this is actually Vike's eye, and we can even see a fingerprint on the eye itself, indicating that Vike, with his flesh already seared, gouged his own eye out.
What a cool detail.
And if the flame of frenzy manifests in one's eyes, perhaps enucleation, the process of removing an eyeball, would provide a cure. We do know one way to disinherit the frenzied flame, Miquella's needle, but that seems to be a totally separate process. After all, there are countless people affected by the flame of frenzy in the game, represented visually by the yellow frenzied eyes, but only one who has actually inherited the flame itself, represented by the seared flesh. So it's best to treat these two as separate processes.
Ooh, okay, wait a minute. Someone answer me this. When you get the frenzied flame from the 3 fingers, It seems clear that Vike had the frenzied flame at one point. How did it get back to the 3 fingers?
Perhaps Vike, after inheriting the frenzied flame, but eventually overcome with guilt about this path and unable to see it to completion, decided to tear out the source of frenzy, removing his own eye, and imprison himself in an Everjail as penance, and to ensure that he would never be in a position to bring about the frenzied chaos.
I don't like that. I like that he pulled out his eye to get rid of the frenzy. I get that. I don't like that he then imprisoned himself, though, so he wouldn't do it again. That seems kind of nuts.
Perhaps that is why the frenzied spirit outside the frenzied flame village speaks with such apparent disappointment when he says, quote, "Ah, Lord Vike, it seems you were no lord after all. Then where is he, our true lord, our lord of frenzied flame?" End quote. This fits quite nicely with the notion that Vike reneged on his plan to become the Lord of Frenzy Flame.
He sure did.
Opting instead to tear out his own eye and repent. This religious connotation fits quite well with another real-world inspiration, the fact that autoenucleation, the process of removing one's eyes, in reality a manifestation, of course, of psychosis, has long been associated in the psychological
reasons for self-enucleation. 43% schizophrenia, 25% drug-induced, 4% bipolar disorder. Okay, schizophrenia, you can be really out there if untreated. I guess I could get that. Drug-induced, you got to be on some real shit, dude. Wow, I don't even know what you got to really be fucked. And bipolar totally surprises me. Like you got to have something else. There's got to be morbidities there. Yeah, that is not what I would have expected.
Literature with ideas of Christian guilt, going all the way back to Freud, who linked it to the Oedipal complex. More scientific researchers than Freud have pointed out that this horrifying act is far less common in non-Christian cultures. And many people who have removed their own eyes actually state they believe they either deserve this fate as punishment for sin or can save some aspect of the world by removing their own eyes. One young woman who in 2017 had a psychotic episode while on methamphetamine stated that she believed she had to sacrifice her eyes to save the world.
Okay, so meth answers that question. Meth will get you to
gouging
take your
eyes out for penance.
You know what's so crazy about that? You've met somebody recently that was actively on meth. You didn't even know it. That's what the craziest part about really addictive drugs is. It hits different people differently, different stages, how long you've been doing it, and all sorts of stuff. There are probably people you work with that do heroin, and you just don't know because they seem totally normal. They do just a little bit at night or something like that. I'm not saying like you can do heroin and that's all going to be good for your life and stuff. Don't do it. But sometimes people go a while with what we would call like a functioning. The average person, this isn't the right terminology to use anymore, but like the average person would call it just like a functioning alcoholic or a functioning drug addict, a functioning heroin user. That I wouldn't say that's totally accurate, but it happens all the time.
Nothing new, and in Vike's case, may have actually clarified him such that he is no longer affected by the flame of frenzy at all. The lands between narrowly avoided disaster, only to wait for a new Tarnished to come along and be confronted with the same dilemma, to sacrifice his maiden and burn down the Erd Tree, or to save his maiden but condemn the world to frenzied chaos. What that Tarnished ultimately chooses depends entirely on how they see the world.
I think I might like that better than the Vati videos. I do, actually. I really like the real world examples, how he really dove into like real life things. I'm pretty good at like sitting around and learning a new story, like taking in the Elden Ring lore and stuff. I love doing it. I wouldn't do this if I didn't. But how Tarnished Archaeologist ties them together to real life stuff is so fun to me. I think that's really great. Definitely gonna have to check more of these out, which I will next time. So thanks for joining me. I'll see you at the next one. Bye.